Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vote 24 TV. Today's a wonderful day, and we are happy to be on here live. You can catch us on Facebook and YouTube. The hashtag is Better Liberia. It is a wonderful day. I know that it's already past 12 in Liberia, but uh, the diaspora is listening, and this is going to be posted on YouTube and Facebook and can be viewed by people subsequently. Today is a very important day. It seems to me, I'm not an economist, but it seems to me that after the elections, one of the most critical piece of instrument that the government should pay attention to is the national budget, because the budget is not just a piece of financial document. It is a reflection of the policy priorities of the government, and it should be able to reflect those promises that the government made during campaign and during elections. It is mature, or its maturity, if the electorates, the citizens, always engage with their representatives in parliament in particular, to be able to see what is in the budget for them. As simple as that. What is in the budget for the people? The budget is a very voluminous document, and of course, it is a requirement by law that the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning produce what is called the citizens budget. The citizens budget is an attempt to ensure that the budget is simplified to the extent possible for the consumption of the ordinary people. The last time I was on this podcast, I was pushing an agenda for the government to focus more on job creation, because our problem in Liberia is not road. Our problem in Liberia is not building high-rise structures, investment in vertical and horizontal infrastructures. Our problem in Liberia is not education. Our problem in Liberia is not corruption. Our problem in Liberia is first and foremost employment. Our problem in Liberia is first and foremost employment. We cannot engage in the fight against corruption without a focus on ensuring that the bread and butter issues in the country is addressed. Our construction of roads should not be neutral, such that we construct the roads without necessarily thinking about how the construction of the road is going to stimulate employment and growth. I would be interested to know exactly how the budget emphasizes or inculcate the issue of employment. How does the budget try to solve the employment question in the country? And this is where our economists are very important in this regard. And whether you are at the University of Liberia as an economist, or you are at the AMEU as an economist, or you are at the UMU as an economist, or you are at the Stella Maris as an economist, at this point in time, it is important that we begin to look at the national budget and see how the budget responds to the employment crisis. Because besides just teaching macroeconomics at the universities, those professors should see themselves as obligated to analyze the problems in the society. They can do that analysis along with their students so that the students begin to form the mindset that is critical for solving problems in society, because education is not neutral. The national budget just released says that there is a revenue outlook of 1.2 billion. And of this 1.2 billion, we have 94% which is domestically sourced and 6% which is externally sourced. This budget, 1.2 billion, is about 37.5% increase over the fiscal year 2025. Good news. Good news. According to the budget economist, the budget analyst, the projected that GDP growth is going to be 5.4% in 2026. It's going to be driven by mining, which will be 11%, agriculture, which is going to be 4.7%, and services, which is going to be 4.2%. There is a projection for fiscal reform transition towards program-based budgeting for stronger accountability and measurable outcome. We've heard this program-based budgeting for a very, very long time. We do not know to what extent this program-based budgeting has been effective, but no doubt it is one of the best options that we can actually look to, because the program-based budgeting is not an abstract budgeting which allows you to throw figures wherever. It's a budgeting that is informed by the actual reality on the ground and the actual needs for development. If you look at the budget, you see that there are major sectors to which allocations are spread. For fiscal year 2026, for public administration alone, we have 465.8 million. And public administration is taking like 38% of the budget. We ought to see what was public administration in the last budget of 2025. I do not have the time to look at it, but it's important for us to compare the difference. We have security and rule of law, which is 13% of the budget, and we have education, which is 11% of the budget. Health, not really appealing, is 8% of the budget. Infrastructure and basic services is 11% of the budget. Energy and environment, 6%. Agriculture, sadly, is 1%. Sadly, agriculture is 1%. Social development services, 16%. Social development services is 1%. 1%. Transparency and accountability, 34.43%. The 34.43 million, and it's just 3% of the budget. The next sector is industry and commerce, is also 1% of the budget, and municipal government, 66.9 million, is 6% of the government, of the budget. These are very interesting figures, and we ought to see how these figures differ from 2025 budget. We need to look at the changes compared to 2025 budget, and I hope some of our economists will take interest in doing a thorough analysis of the budget for 2026. There is a total recurrent spending package in the budget, 929.6 million, which claims 76.7%. And then there is public sector investment. The public sector investment plan, which is 281.5 million, or 23% of the budget. This public sector investment plan is boosted by US 200 million from ArcelorMittal signature bonus. I come from a civil society background, and we established what we call the Foundation for Human Rights and Democracy, which became the first NGO, the first civil society institution, which committed itself to focusing on economic, social, and cultural rights. To be able to work in that field, we had a challenge. And the challenge was, whenever we tried to bring government to book on a particular issue, say the support to education or agriculture or health, there was always this question about whether government purse has the capacity of responding adequately to this sector and thereby protecting the rights in those regards. The government would always, even with the improvement in the revenue generation, the government will always argue that it does not have the capacity to be able to adequately fund the realization of the rights to health, the rights to education, the rights to food, and the likes. Therefore, it became an obligation to throw some focus on the national budget, which is an instrument that will clearly show whether or not the government is able to respond in that regard. This was not an easy task at all. Working to analyze the budget wasn't an easy task. I remember in 2006, we were the first institution that advocated an open budget process. And we were the first institution that went out, wrote communication. When I say we, I mean the Foundation for Human Rights and Democracy. wrote communication for the budget to be made public. We wrote communication for the budget to be made public. We wrote the Budget Bureau in 2006. To give copy of the draft budget to civil society, but that did not yield any fruit. The Budget Bureau rejected giving us copy of the draft budget. They submitted the budget to the legislature through the speaker. At the time, Edwin Melvin Snow he received the budget, and we made an appeal to Edwin Melvin Snow, Speaker of the House, that it is an obligation of the government to make the budget public. The budget is a public document. Gracefully, Edwin Melvin Snow yielded and made copies of the budget for civil society consumption. Now, when we received the budget, we became very charged in showing that government could do better. But this is to say that civil society has been a very important part of the transformation processes in Liberia. Working with the Green Advocates, LDR, and other civil society institutions, we were able to put together a citizen budget guide and advocated for an open budget process, which culminated into the drafting of the citizen budget. It is important for us to say these things so that we know exactly where civil society has been in these times of our accountability processes. There are a lot of endeavors by civil society that brought about the kind of environment, transparent environment that we see today. So civil society is not very far away from the national budget. But as I said before, something is happening to civil society in Liberia, and we have to pay attention to that. There are about 650 uh, civil society organizations across the country informed the national agenda and the budget processes in Liberia. But it is disheartening to see that the budget does not dedicate any line item or budgetary framework for direct civil society funding, which is a key issue for integrating the civil society into national development. The social development service sector with 16.1 million is one of the smallest allocation despite hosting institutions such as the Liberia Agency for Community Empowerment and the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Both institutions are crucial for employment and empowerment programs. So I kind of wonder, and we'll need explanation to this, to see to what extent employment and empowerment was considered when making the allocation to social development services sector. As I said before, the strong emphasis on programs-based budgeting and citizen engagement provides an entry point for integrating civil society organization as implementing partner in job creation and accountability initiatives. Civil society institutions are more than capable of finding or identifying programs that correspond with the national agenda that will at the same time help to create jobs. The budget marks progress in fiscal discipline. If we can just say, but civil society participation remains under institutionalized. Without civil society funding mechanism, Liberia risks missing the inclusive development and job creation potential embedded in the arrest agenda. We have to think deep. I don't know at what point civil society is going to be included in the budget, but I still do think that it is important for civil society to be included in the budget if we are thinking about job creation in any sense. Creating jobs is more than just civil society, but civil society is a key partner in that endeavor. So if you look at the public sector investment plan job window, we can certainly say that civil society can fit in this area in terms of job creation. We saw that the public sector investment plan jumped from 281.5 million jumped to 281.5 million in 2026. Thanks to the accelerometer signature bonus. And this is not something that we are going to get every year. So the funds allocated to public sector investment plan can target civil society as a major partner in job creation, delivering areas like TVET, youth work, agriculture, and urban services. Apart from the civil society involvement with monitoring projects and programs across the country that are intended to benefit the citizens, it is important to have civil society involved in these small and medium enterprises acceleration and TVETs. We can carve out a civil society organization job delivery window. 5 to 10% of the public sector investment plan allocation. We can allow civil society to compete for sub grants or contracts for things such as youth employment and skills, short cycle TVET, plus job placement, which civil society is capable of doing. We can look at areas of agro processing and market access. Look at cooperation, storage, quality, and offtake. We can also look at community public works, which can be managed by the local government, the city government, can manage some of these things. Civil society can work around feeder roads, maintenance, and roadside brushing, the work around water and sanitation and waste management. If you look at the public investment plan, public sector investment plan line, I do not think that there is a requirement or there is a need for any legal change to be able to incorporate civil society. It would be easy if the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning issue a CSOTOR, a term of reference, run by a multi-sector steering committee, which civil society is able to come up with, or that could include the planning department at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning to coordinate civil society integration into the national budget under the public sector investment plan project line. When you look at the education sector, civil society can also be keyed in working with the MOE and the TVET program and rural training institutes. Education receives about 133 million with reform emphasis existing rural training institutes, Kakata, Webo, Zozo, and Morovia Vocational Training Center. The education sector with 133 million can also bring in the civil society, whether from the angle of monitoring the performance or from the angle of delivering some of these required interventions, some of these important interventions. It is something welcoming for civil society participation. I don't see why we cannot make an effort to include civil society institutions. The reason why civil society institutions are very important is because in time past, civil society was a very key partner in reducing the burden on government with respect to employment of the Liberian people. civil society absorbs a significant portion of the employable population. But as civil society is experiencing financial droughts, it becomes difficult for civil society to adequately play this role, and the burden now is shifting on government, and it's even overweighing the government. Government has to make deliberate efforts to ensure that our people get jobs. And one of the low-hanging fruits that government can be able to pay attention to is civil society. It's important for the government to introduce a performance-based civil society sub-grant for school-to-work bridges, apprenticeships with local firms, and short digital skill courses start to employer demand. And let's look at the Ministry of Youth and Sports also. The allocation for social development is small. It's just 16.1 million. But it's where youth employment belongs. Civil society organizations already operate youth livelihood and reintegration programs at scale. It is important for government through the Ministry of Youth and Sports to see how they can partner with civil society and begin to work on creating more jobs outside of government. They can create a youth employment challenge fund managed by the Ministry of Youth and Sports to deliver to be delivered by civil society. That funds can carry on rapid training, provide startup kits, and provide mentorship for small and medium enterprises. People can be mentored into engaging in businesses that are profitable, um, in businesses that are profitable and sustainable. Let's look at the Ministry of Agriculture. Is there a possibility to ensure a value chain jobs? Agriculture grows food and other cash crops, but jobs are low compared to productivity. Agroforestry royalties are strong in The public sector investment plan has rooms that they can be able to work around with Ministry of Agriculture and CARI to ensure that job creation is a focus that prepares the investment in value chain, food production, or the agriculture value chains. So CSO, for instance, can organize cooperatives, can help to satisfy producers, link producers to buyers, and run some last mile extension and aggregation program within the rubber, palm oil, cassava, rice, and cocoa value chains. But this can also work with the municipal government that can possibly create urban jobs with a 66.9 million budgetary allocations. Cities can purchase labor intensive services from civil society organizations like waste, drainage cleaning, and greening of the environment and markets. There can be youth crews for waste collections. It is possible the MCC has been working in this direction for some time, but this is something that needs to claim the attention of the Ministry of Internal Affairs as well, the Urban Development Department, and the Ministry of Planning to see how those municipal authorities can begin to think about job creation and put emphasis on outsourcing some of these critical functions that will stimulate growth within the private sector. Civil society can be very valuable in this direction. With regard to waste management, for example, a critical component is awareness raising, and civil society is needed in this area. People need to be aware on how to dispose of their waste so that we, on the preventive side, are able to manage uh, the waste disposal and make waste disposal safe and manageable. With public works, with public works, 133.2 million allocation with big job multiplier. Feeder roads and maintenance are ideal for civil society manage community contracts. The roads are built in communities. The contractors who build the roads are not always around. low grade maintenance of those roads can be a civil society function. Civil society can organize people in the community to make sure that the roads are always maintained such that those areas where there are possibilities for damage to occur, civil society can be the first response in terms of clearing those particles that may cause damage to the roads. It would be a good thing to reserve 2 to 3% of road under the public sector investment plan for CSO-led community maintenance brigade. It could be women, youth, whatsoever, and it could be paid per kilometer maintained. Those are very important things to do, and it's important because most time we build our roads, they don't last long because we have some uh, diets settling on the road and it collect water and the water damage the tarmac. But if the community people are involved through the civil society, it makes it a little bit easier to handle. There are a lot of sector. If we just think how we create jobs, things are going to be a little easier for us. In all of these sectors, there are possibilities that you can be able to think about how you can create jobs and you can be able to find a means, even the very minimum. Civil society does not ask for much, but they are able to mobilize the community and they're able to organize them in a way that the very little that they're able to get, that they can reach out to the people and put some money into their pocket and put some food on their table. It is important that we emphasize job creation as we formulate our budget and make sure that civil society has a slice in the job creation agenda. When you look at the transparency and accountability sector, for example, GSC, LACC, IAA, jobs can be created for civil society in the social accountability area. There can be budget reforms that can invite civil society oversights. The Ministry of Finance and Development Planning can expand the FTAG to include civil society and publish citizens' budget performance report. I don't know how the citizens' budget is being developed currently, but civil society ought to have a role in the development of the citizens' budget. And besides, the civil society, from a neutral standpoint, ought to develop and publish a citizen budget performance report. I know this might not seem very palatable to the politicians, but it is a good thing for any government that means well. Civil society should not be isolated in the budget formulation, and delivery processes. Civil society should be involved with the budget monitoring and community scorecards on jobs programs. Civil society are in the community, they can verify train, they can carry on attendance, they can verify attendance, they can verify placement, they can verify wage payments. Civil society is right there in the community. They can do a lot with very little. All of these are about job creation, and we cannot overemphasize this. Liberia major problem is the lack of jobs. If you see a lot of people on Facebook insulting other people, just to belong to a political party, it is not because they want to do that, but they want to see their patrons. They want to see that their patrons are watching and appreciating them. And if this practice goes on for a very long time, we are going to see the sustaining of the patronage system. I cannot say that the patronage system has not re-emerged. It has. But what is obtaining now is consolidation of the patronage system within the bureaucracy. This is wrong. We ought to create space for the private sector to breathe, and the civil society is a very important partner. The Ministry of Finance and Development Planning and the national government can take interest in matching donor funds to civil society one-to-one for employment-focused civil society projects that align with their REST agenda. I can go on and on and on and on listing some of the areas that civil society can be very important, very useful. But we will leave some of these things for another day. But just to inform you that our focus should be on job creation. There is a tendency that the budget that we create tend to focus the other way around. Put the money towards the public officials, give them fat salaries and benefits, and then the people within the civil society and the private sector, the unemployed goes to the public officials, and the public officials now assume the responsibility of putting money in the pockets of the citizens. That is a very dangerous way to go, and we have to try our best to reverse that. Liberia has come a long way, and we should maintain our democracy, we should maintain our peace by investing in our people. It is important for entities like the Ministry of Youth and Sports, through the public sector investment program, to launch a youth employment challenge funds to see where civil society that have the capacity of employing youth can come up in an annual or quarterly competition with proposals and plans. This would be an area where you can see maximum transformation in very short time. There are a lot of programs that can possibly be initiated and anchored in the national budget. But we have to be very deliberate to want to make these changes. I would like to inform you that until the budget is passed, we are going to assemble some of our colleagues who have expertise in the national budget evaluation and analysis to look at the budget and see how the budget is responding to job creation or not. And let's try to come to some kind of consensus on how the national budget can be a tool for creating jobs for our people in Liberia. Because absent job, there is going to be heartening insecurity. Absent jobs, there are going to be an increase in the patronage culture. Absent jobs, they are going to be a huge burden on the public sector. Absent jobs, there are going to be serious political tensions. And absent jobs, there are going to be social degradations. We have to take this issue about jobs very serious in Liberia, as an unemployed man is the most dangerous person you can ever find, because nobody will allow himself to die simply because he's unemployed. He may do all of the moral things to help himself out of the situation, but when morality cannot sustain him, it is not ruled out that he may take solace in immorality to sustain himself. Our government should see this as an obligation to be able to transform our country and make Liberia a safe place. Thank you for now. Hope we meet again tomorrow for another presentation, and I'm making all effort to get some of our colleagues who understand the budget process very well and who are able to speak to particular sectors within the budget, who are able to put the numbers together and rationalize them. We're going to get people on this platform. Let me say this is Vote 24 TV, and this program is new. These are our way of test broadcasting, and we are going to be one of these major institutions that will try to bring sense to the discourse and evaluating our policy regime and making recommendations for policy changes where necessary, or making recommendation for implementations of existing policy. I'm Harold Beatty. It was nice being with you today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.